Friday, September 6th, 2013. 1 ounce of silver is $24. 1 Bitcoin is $125. Peace News Now is brought to you in part by friends of WeUseCoins.com. Learn about Bitcoin at WeUseCoins.com. eBay wrote about Bitcoins in their blog this week. With a fun, colorful, and easy-to-understand video, eBay presented Bitcoins as a new method of payment. The video communicates some of the most important facts about Bitcoin, that they make it possible to pay someone across the globe instantly and anonymously. Bitcoin is decentralized, so they don't depend on a bank or a government to issue them, and they're impossible to counterfeit. Speaking of governments, no one can take your Bitcoins, like they can with your bank account. Learn more from the cool video in the show notes, or visit WeUseCoins.com. Also of note, Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, is a huge fan of Bitcoins, as is their current CEO. This next story brought to you by friends of Blockchain.info. Once you get some Bitcoins, you're going to need some place to store them. Download the free wallet app at Blockchain.info. Speaker of the House John Boehner is third in charge of the U.S. empire. RT reported yesterday that he refused a proposal to meet with agents of the Russian government to discuss the situation in Syria. The Duma members plan to visit Washington next week to persuade their American counterparts not to attack Syria. Later, Putin hammered the U.S. Secretary of State, saying that John Kerry lied to the American Congress. Quote, "They lie. Plainly. I watched the congressional debate. A congressman asked Mr. Kerry, 'Is there any Al-Qaeda in Syria?' 'There are reports they have been growing stronger.' Kerry replied, 'No. I say with all responsibility, there is no Al-Qaeda there.' Putin explained that the most active terrorist organization in Syria, the so-called Al-Nusra Front, pledges allegiance to Al-Qaeda, and that the U.S. is well aware of that. Well, Putin continued, Kerry is lying, and he knows that he's lying. The Russian Navy is now deploying a destroyer to the eastern Mediterranean, and they say it has nothing to do with the crisis in Syria. Syria's port in the Mediterranean is Russia's only foreign port, making it a strategic and valuable stronghold for the superpower. According to a ministry spokesman's statement on Tuesday, a senior naval source told reporters, quote, "It would be wrong to draw any connection between the rotation of our ships in the Mediterranean region and events in Syria. Is it? You decide." This story brought to you by Bitcoin Not Bombs. Dollars fund wars of aggression. Donate to true humanitarian causes using Bitcoin. Go to bitcoinnotbombs.com. In the UK, a surge of soldiers want to quit the army. According to their own numbers, the latest round of army applications to leave early was 40% oversubscribed by volunteers wanting to quit. The highest percentage of those throwing in the towel? Officers. Less than 2/3 of those who applied to leave were let go. One senior army source said, quote, "It's the worst I've seen it." We're talking about highly experienced middle-ranking officers who have spent the last 12 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. On a related note, the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee is meeting this November 1st to the 3rd in Manhattan. If you'd like to show your resistance to the war, perhaps you'll consider joining the millions of Americans who choose not to file income taxes this year. You know what politicians are doing with your money, and you don't condone it. At some point, you've got to stop sending it to them. Learn more by searching National War Tax Resistance. Speaking of tax resistance, Obamacare's excessive taxes are forcing employers and employees alike to make unwanted concessions. They'd both like to keep working the same number of hours, but the law forces employers to make unwanted cutbacks to avoid a newly introduced penalty. During a recent interview, even the AFL-CIO president admitted the unintended consequences of Obamacare are leading employers to, quote, restructure their workforce to give workers 29.5 hours so they don't have to provide them with health care. Perhaps the solution is less meddling by bureaucrats in others' private affairs. Peace News Now is on the Next News Network and is brought to you in part by friends of WeUseCoins.com. I want you to share this episode, and if you enjoyed it, send some Bitcoin to donate.peacenewsnow.com. I'm Derek J, reminding you that peace is the way.